everyone, and welcome to Eatistic. It's a pleasure having you join us today. Today, we're making Red Velvet Cheesecake, a combination of two of my very favorite desserts. I am excited. I hope you're excited. Follow the recipe. You're going to enjoy this. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and click that notification button so you don't miss our future recipes. Come on, let's cook. All right, let's do this. So we're using two 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese. It's already in our container. We're using 3/4 cups of white sugar. We're using a pinch of salt. I'm using sea salt. Sorry. We're using 2 eggs beaten, a 1/3 cup sour cream, and a 1/3 cup heavy whipping cream, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. We're going to combine it all together. First, we're making our cheesecake, and then we'll combine it all together in this container. Let's start by beating our cream cheese. It's best to have your cream cheese. It's best to have your cream cheese at room temperature. Okay, and now we'll add 3/4 cups of white sugar. We're going to add just a pinch of salt and one of our eggs. I have it beaten in a container, so I'll add some of my eggs now. Don't add it all at once. And then continue beating. I'm going to add my other egg. And then I'll add 1/3 cup of sour cream, 1/3 cup of heavy whipping cream, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And mix together once more. Make sure you scrape the sides, get it all in there. So keep mixing it together until it's completely combined and creamy. Now in the meantime, preheat your oven at 325 degrees. You don't want to over mix your mixture, so once it's completely smooth, you might have a little bit of lumps in there. Try to get out as much of the lumps as possible. You see my mixture is nice and smooth, so now it's ready to go in the oven. We're going to be using a 9-inch baking container. I've lined my container with parchment paper. Pour it in there. And put this in the oven, and then we'll get started on the red velvet portion of the cake. So once you get it all in there, just shake it up, make sure it's nice and even. See that? Beautiful. Stick it in the oven, 325. It will bake for about 45 minutes. All right, so now our cheesecake is in the oven. Let's work on our red velvet cake. So first we're going to do the dry ingredients. I have already in my sifter 2.5 cups of flour. This is all-purpose flour. It doesn't matter what flour you use. We're using 2 tablespoons of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and a pinch of salt. And we're going to sift our dry ingredients. Sifting is good because it gives your cake a light and fluffy texture, if you choose not to, and it takes out the lumps of out of the dry ingredients. If you prefer not to sift, or you don't have the proper tools to do so, then you might get away with it. But as you can see, all the lumps are left back in the sifter. Especially when you're working with cocoa powder, it's best to sift your dry ingredients. See that? Okay, so let's now mix that all together. Ensure that it's properly mixed in and completely combined. And then you put this aside, and then we'll work on our wet ingredients. It already has a nice texture, a nice smell, and a nice color. Let's work on our wet ingredients. Okay, so now let's do our wet ingredients. I'm using ½ cup of unsalted butter. We're using 1½ cups of white sugar. 2 eggs, but we're going to put them one at a time. One cup of milk. I'm using 2% milk, but you could use buttermilk if you wish. I'm using 1 cup of extra virgin olive oil, but you could use regular oil if you want. Then I'm going to add to that 1 teaspoon of white vinegar, 2 teaspoons of vanilla. And let's mix that together. Now we're going to add our food coloring. Of course, it's a red velvet cheesecake, so red velvet, so clearly we're using red. So I'm using 1 tablespoon of red food coloring, but if you want it to be darker, you could add more. You could use up to 2½ tablespoons. All right, so let's just get that mixed all together. And then we're going to combine our wet and our dry ingredients. Just make a hole there in the middle. Don't pour all of your wet ingredients at once. Gradually get it in there. There we go. Now I'm using my hand to do this part. You could use the mixer, but I'll use my hand. You don't want to over mix your mixture. It's just a matter of combining it to an even consistency. You don't need to over mix it. So once everything is completely combined, then we're going to be using 2 9-inch layered containers. Layered baking containers. I've already greased my containers. And then we're going to pour the dough into our baking containers. Now, if you find that your cake batter is a little bit too too thick, you could add a little bit more milk. Try to evenly separate your dough into, because you're layering your red velvet with your cheesecake. So try to evenly separate it. Let's go. All right, so we put our cakes in the oven, and that's going to take about 25 to 30 minutes. So in the meantime, let's work on our frosting or icing. We have here 2 8-ounce blocks of cream cheese. To that, I'm going to add 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla and 1/2 cup of butter, and then 3.5 cups of powdered sugar or icing sugar. All right, let's get our butter or cream cheese. Okay, so this end is not working out. We're going to change the end. So we're now going to add our butter. 1.5 cup of butter. It's best that your butter and your cream cheese are at room temperature. It's easier to handle. Ensure that you scrape the edges so that everything gets in there. If you're using a hand mixer, it's best to use your mixer at the medium to high speed. We're going to add our 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla. And now let's gradually add our powdered sugar or icing sugar. As I said before, it's 3.5 cups, but you're going to add it in small portions. All right, so we've mixed our frosting until it's completely smooth, beautiful. You could taste it. Try not to eat all of it before you put it on the cake. Okay, so we're going to rest this in the refrigerator while our cakes continue to bake in the oven. And as I said before, when your cheesecake has cooled for an hour, you can also rest that in the refrigerator as well. And then we'll come back and we'll combine and decorate our cake. That's going to be the best part. All right, see you soon. All right, now it's time for my favorite part. This is the part where you can be creative. So our frosting is ready. Our cheesecake was nicely chilled in the fridge. You see, it's beautiful. It wasn't even cracked. And our red velvet cakes came out beautiful. All right, so if your cake is not flat enough, you could cut off the top portion of it to make it flat, but mine is perfect, so I'm happy. I'm gonna place it upside down, and then I'm gonna put my cheesecake on top of it. Remember to take the paper off because it's blended in beautifully. Place the cheesecake. Oh, beautiful. And then our second layer of red velvet cake upside down, right on top. Beautiful. Now, if you cut off a piece of your cheesecake, your red velvet cake, you could just make it into crumbs. We're going to use that to decorate. Okay? Make sure all 3 layers are even. If it's not even, you could just cut off pieces to make it even. I think mine is fine. Okay, so let's get our frosting on there. Put a generous amount of frosting on top of the cake. And then we're going to use our tool just to spread it out there. Now this is going to be the first layer. I call this the crumb layer. Well, not me. I didn't call it that. This is the crumb layer. So this layer will get some crumbs in there. So don't worry about that. We're going to put another layer on top of that. Okay, so now get some of the frosting at the sides. If you have holes in there, try to fill them out with the frosting. It doesn't have to be perfect, but once your frosting is done properly, your cake will look perfect. We're going to smooth this out. Don't worry that it's a little bit messy right now. That's okay. As I said, this is our crumb layer. We're just trying to get the icing in every corner. And then we'll come back and we'll do another layer. I'm going to rest this in the refrigerator for 10 minutes. And then we'll come back and do another layer. So put a generous amount of frosting to the sides. Now I put a little bit of food coloring in some of the frosting to give it a little bit of color. Before that, let's add some of the crumbs. After you've finished decorating your cake, you can rest it in the refrigerator for another couple of minutes.